Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from Delta CX. We're a full service CX and UX consultancy, so drop on by, low ego action heroes. Today is the second Tuesday of the month, and you know what that means. It means it's time for office hours. Ask Us Anything with special guests Darren Hood and Dr. Nick Fine. So let's welcome them into our realm. And in order on the screen, Darren, tell everybody who the heck you are.
Hi, everybody. Darren Hood. You probably go get the shortest intro you've ever had for me today.
You usually give us the 12-inch dance remix.
Not today. I am an old veteran of the experience design world, dating back to 95. I am an educator. I am a podcaster. I am one who absolutely loves the discipline of experience design and want to see other people love it and be extended, have the same opportunities extended to them to be successful as I have been. That's it.
All right. And hi, Charlene in the audience. And Dr. Nick, tell us about your world.
Hi, everybody. Kind of sounds like The Simpsons. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Nick. That's exactly what he does. Anyway, I'm a working UX practitioner of 10 years. Past 5, 6, 7 years have been as a contractor. I work public and private sector, and that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm the noisy guy on LinkedIn. I'm the founder of UX Psychology, which seeks to bring psychology practices into the UX world, i.e. social science methodologies. I'm a big scientist, and I hit people with my science bat. And that's me.
Is that like hit me with your rhythm stick?
Yeah, hit me with your science bat.
Okay, one hurts more. Well, thank you. Great to have both of you back, something we do every month. Just a reminder to those who are watching, please subscribe here on the YouTube channel for no other reason than vanity. I'm going for 3,000 subscribers this year. And of course, you can join our Slack channel, which is completely free, Slack Workspace, deltacx.link/join Slack. Won't you empathize with the like button and leave some comments, and of course, optional tip jar. Yes, I said hashtag empathy, y'all. So we did get some. I don't have a graphic for empathy. Other than
you need a hand signal.
Usually
Like
I do this. I go empathy.
Empathy, man.
I feel it.
I'm
creating delight. So today we did get some questions ahead of time, but just remember that if you'd like to ask a question, we are live. YouTube, you're probably delayed about 30 seconds, and you can ask your question at deltacx.link/ask, which is above Nick's head, or you can ask it here in the LinkedIn or YouTube chat room. I'm watching both. So let's start with some of the questions we got. Right, somewhere exactly right there. Thank you, Nick, for being the Price is Right lady. Right. So the first question we got ahead of time, I think, is mostly aimed at me, but it says, what is your take on CX maturity in South Africa and Africa, seeing that you recently joined Immersion Group? So I think that one's for me. I did recently join Immersion Group, which is a CX and UX consultancy headquartered in South Africa. I'm still doing the Delta CX world, so no crying aloud. As for the maturity, and I've only been there 2 weeks, so I can't say too much about the maturity, but so far it seems to be like pretty much everywhere else. So for the companies, some companies get CX and UX and some don't. But I would say that the job market is very different. It reminds me of the job market in America in like 2014. There's very few talented and educated South African UX specialists. And so there's a massive battle for the few that are quite good and have already leveled up. I'm hoping we'll hire more apprentices and help people level up, but I don't remember seeing a job market like this since America before boot camps, put it that way. So thank you for the question. All right, the next question we got is a long story. Y'all take out your notepads. Next, I got to remember next time to send y'all a Google Doc so you can read along with these. But this is a story. And our writer says, Dear Casey, no, I'm kidding. That only Darren would get that one. Here we go. Is reiteration a form of narcissism or just a high ego villain? Right now, every time I go through a presentation with my team, the rest of the hour is spent by people just reiterating in their own words what I just went over in depth. I've looked at my approach and changed it a few times, thinking maybe I wasn't explaining clear enough if team members constantly had to reiterate everything I say. But now I'm wondering what it means and how to deal with this. They also seem to be reading off a script. I'm going to go through the whole thing. They agree with what I just went over, but then basically paraphrase and then start going on the same lecture they've gone through time and time again about what we're going to do next, with very little action being taken. It's always hard for me to get a word in here as well. Everyone goes on and on talking, talks over each other, and I end up not being able to speak, because to do so I'd have to be rude, and I also know no one is listening. Is there anything I can do to learn from this as I polish my resume? Also, what the heck is going on here? I've never met an organization that acts like this. Nick, you look like you are jumping at this one.
I love this one. Sorry, who's asking the question? What's the name or person's name?
This one's, I know who it is, but this was sent anonymously, so we're just going to say
Okay.
anonymous Slack channel friend.
Okay, sorry. Hello, anonymous Slack channel friend. An excellent question you asked. This is so red hot and common in my world. Okay, so the reiteration is actually reflection. So by verbalizing it, they're reflecting their internalization. This is a good thing. They are learning it, and they didn't know it before. This is evidence that it's hitting the right places and the penny has dropped, and now they're sounding authoritative, but actually training themselves. They're actually practicing that new meme, that new routine, right? What this is a form of mirroring. And again, that's excellent, because believe it or not, you're role modeling. And if they're mirroring you, this is good for organization change, transformation, whatever that stuff. This is also known, when you talked about everyone talking over each other, this is what I call clue chasing. It's like someone's thrown a lump of clue into a room full of hungry, not clueful people. And everyone's trying to fight for the clue. And they talk over each other. And because you've just triggered everybody in a really positive way, that's what you're seeing. It's kind of noise, but it's good noise. You know what I'm saying? That they're refining that new neuron that's just been, you know what I mean, that new lump of knowledge that's in there. It's basically, the bottom line is it's good. Don't take any of this personally. Just observe the phenomenon as it happens. You have to allow some of this stuff to happen. It's part of the process. But after a period of time, you must stop it and get the session, the facilitation back on track. But it must be allowed to breathe and to happen. Because if you don't let that happen, you won't get the change that you need. These pennies have to drop in everybody's mind. And if it happens collectively, fantastic, but it gets messy, and that's what you see.
Interesting. Okay, so it sounds like maybe this person needs to plan an agenda for the meeting that allows room for this, and then says, okay, that part of the meeting is over. Now let's go back to our action item or our decision point, or whatever it is. Thanks for that, Nick. Really interesting perspective I wasn't expecting to hear. Darren, yours?
Yep. Let me piggyback on what Dr. Nick said. Throw one extra piece of explanation on it. What I was thinking about, I'm jotting down notes this time too. I'm going to do my impression of Dr. Nick, and I got my notes over here. So it's an aspect of active listening. When it's being done, when it's genuine, it's active listening. And so you want them, they're repeating what you said, waiting for you to confirm that they're understanding correctly, so that we need to be actively involved in that. Yes, you got it. Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's correct. But to his point also, if it goes on too long, because every once in a while you'll get somebody, they're not really engaging in active listening. They're engaging in what I'll call a design filibuster. And they're just carrying things on. And then again, as Dr. Nick said, then you just take charge of that and steer them in the right direction. For the most part, though, it just takes some patience on our part. Let it sink in for them. Be grateful about that. At least they're not like trying to throw you out. At least you're at the meeting. They're not just really trying to play games, and just, up the ante by helping everybody to get back on track, confirming for them when they say something, instead of, don't just let them talk. Make sure you confirm that they got it, because they do want feedback from you when they're engaging in active listening. And that's pretty much it. But no, I'm glad to hear that. I wish more people would do that when they don't get it, or when it's not clear that they got it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And the questions are starting to pour in. So just know, Amanda, we got yours, or the person who sent it in through Video Ask. Charlene, Oko, David, you're on the list. Paulius, I can't tell if that is a question or a statement, so let me know if you're going to type more. But I will move on to the next question. Let's see. Okay, so the next question is, what are some things you think a researcher should think about or be cautious of when working with an external research vendor?
Oh, shit. That's easy.
Okay, Nick, take it then, if it's that easy. Tough guy.
Everything. Well, I mean everything. I mean everything. I mean, do not trust anything. And I say this with a high degree of confidence. And I'm so sorry for the agency person I've ever worked with. But these are the facts, Jack. If your client side agency is trying to optimize, and trust me, they don't always put the best people on the gig. So it's the old bait and switch of pitching with your seniors and your leads, and delivering with your juniors and your mids. Long story short is when don't trust it. Use it all as hypotheses at best, and revalidate anything you need to. That's the best, most concise advice I can give you. Darren?
Yep, I've got 4 things, and I'm glad you went first so I could type my notes out. The first thing, I'm going to flip what I've typed out here. The first thing is, if there's an external vendor, you need to have a separate conversation with leadership to confirm why they're there. There are cases where they need to be there. I remember when I worked at a design agency and we just had too much work. We didn't have the bandwidth to do everything. So when certain things were going on, like, did anybody ever see the movie Borat? And they did I think that was a movie where they had a focus group, right? And the guy in the movie, and the guy leading the focus group, his name was Barry. That guy's name is Barry. I worked with him before. And that's what he does. And so they actually had a real focus group instance in the movie. And so Barry was the guy when we did our focus groups, when we were doing work for Ford Motor Company and doing focus groups, when we were rolling out oh my God, those things are coming like crazy. So we couldn't do what Barry's group specialized in. We didn't have the bandwidth or certain resources. So we understood why they were there. If somebody, I just heard about a story recently where the company went around the UX team. They hired a UX lead that they could push around. The person's not qualified. They wanted to be able to push them around. So they hired somebody that could be a puppet and would not actually lead the team. They went outside the team and brought in an external UX research vendor. If the company did that, find out why. After you find out why, which probably is not going to be a good thing, but when you find out why, make sure that when you're dealing with these external folks, make sure the expectations are properly set. I would recommend establishing a project charter so all the roles are clearly defined. And then lastly, when you work with external organizations, they're usually looking out for their own butt, and they have more interest in their own butt than the work they're doing for you. So you're going to have to navigate that carefully. You don't owe them anything in general. So the dynamics, the interpersonal dynamics are going to be quite different. But I feel for you. For anybody who's in that situation, I really feel for you, where it's not justified to have brought somebody in, like in the situation we did with Barry, and his team was dynamite too. They understood why they were there. We knew why they were there. They worked together well with us. Everybody was happy. But I've worked with an external vendor where I was actually backfilling them, and they were leaving, and they were completely hostile the entire time, and that's not cool. So
what I'd like to add to that is, when I think about a lot of the things we talk about on this channel, we have so many people who say, "Oh my God, they want to teach research to product managers and QA testers and marketing. Why can't we bring in researchers?" And then many companies that don't have budgets will end up bringing in agencies and freelancers and consultants. And so I guess that while there are a lot of things to be careful about, and what Darren and Nick said are totally true, I would probably still celebrate that whoever made the decision to bring that person in didn't instead make the decision to hand a lean UX book to a developer and say, "You get to do research now." So I think, thankful for little blessings. And also, we don't know
Yes.
who the researcher is, though I agree with Nick, many companies do bait and switch and send in very junior people who are sometimes quite weak. My company is sometimes the vendor who's coming in. And so I know that not everybody who comes in is garbage, and not everybody who comes in is baiting and switching, because when we went into a famous company last year and did some research because their team was too overloaded, it was me and Larry Marine doing the research. So, not everybody sends in the garbage team. So I would say give these people at least a fair chance. Look them up on LinkedIn. You probably know the name of the person who's coming. Look them up on LinkedIn. See if they seem to know what they're doing and what level they're going to be at. And then you can manage that relationship for what it's going to be. Find out if they're working on the same thing as you, something different. Are you partnering with them? There's so many questions here, but I would say I agree with the gentleman, but also want to point out that I wouldn't automatically assume this person is garbage. I would do a little bit digging, and I would still be thrilled that it's not the business analyst doing interviews.
Having you and Larry Marine doing user research is a bit like having, I don't know, the Rolling Stones wash. I don't know. It's like having rock stars. Having one amazing person on a gig is one thing. But having two, that's like that just doesn't happen.
Oh, well, it's mostly just for the timing of it, but it's also fun to work with him. So, yeah. By the way, everybody who's been sending in questions, I see all of it, and I'm adding them to the list, but the list is long, so I promise we will get to your question. I just can't say when. Like Moral, I see your question, and I am copying and pasting it in. Next time I'll have to do a Google Doc for you guys. I'm sorry I forgot to do that. So I hope that helps, and good luck with the outside agency. All right, so let's see. Next question. When doing a usability test, how many designs should be tested? How many do you have?
Yeah, how long's a piece of string? I'm sorry. I'm being a bit.
That set the stage for our wonderfully common answer in UX. It depends. It depends on what on what it is you need to get answers on. It depends on the sometimes you're doing research, you're trying to solve issues with the team. Sometimes the team is divided with regard to what's going to work and what's not going to work. Okay, so now the best thing to do is to use your usability testing, the data, to manage that, to use that, because if they're not going to listen to you, hopefully they'll listen to data. So you're going to factor that in. Maybe you're doing some A/B testing. Maybe you're doing some first click testing. So it depends on the scenario.
Nick, anything to add there?
Can the questionnaire, are they able to tell us a bit more about the particular instance? Because then we can give more specific advice.
Yes.
Yeah, it's David in LinkedIn. David, do you want to add something to that? And he says, we're debating on it. You can do it with one. Yeah, you can usability test one design. I've never usability tested more than two in one test. But that's just me, and that just happens to be, I think that I need to narrow down my designs before I take them to testing. I don't want to usability test 8 designs. So, but David, do you want to add anything to this before Nick gives you the answer? Because there's probably 40 seconds delay.
David, let me ask you a question then. Does this thing exist already? Like, is this an ongoing thing, or is it a brand new thing? Right? If it's a brand new thing, going with one is probably a bad idea. If it's an existing thing, one is probably the only idea, but then you have A/B multivariate that Darren's talking about. So there's lots of different ways of slicing it. There's no way either of us could give you any answer that was meaningful unless we got more from you.
Okay, we got
And I was gonna
an
throw,
answer from him. I think okay, so the question wasn't exactly what we thought. He says, "I have a design and my PO thinks it's a waste of time to do a usability test on one design." So it sounds like he needs our support or answer to do a usability test on a single design.
I think the question is still what the PO is saying is still off base. You can have one design, but how many task flows need to be evaluated? So it's not about the number of designs. I mean, what are they really trying to examine one page within? Because they're saying design, and we're probably all thinking experience. And the experience is all encompassed within one design, but there's a lot of different things going on. So I think that needs to be blown out a little bit more, maybe in the way that the interaction is taking place with the PO, because one design, what does that really even mean? I'm still stuck there. There's a lot that's going on. One design could mean 35 micro experiences. It could, so what are we getting at? So, and the PO's not going to know that. A lot of UXers don't understand micro experiences and micro interactions. I'm sure the PO doesn't.
All right. Solomon, is that a real question or are you just being rhetorical? Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Oh, I see. David says they want to release it and see what the voice of the customer says or if they get complaints.
No, you do that during testing.
No.
You do that during research.
No, David, no.
During research, not. No, you don't release the vehicle with the square wheels and then see how it works.
Does anyone have a square wheels emoji for this? Where's Kayleen? Nick, something to add here to this disaster?
Yeah. Okay. Why did you design this thing? Does it solve the problem? Okay. That's what the product owner, the product manager, that's what you guys should be debating. Why? What are you doing here? No, I don't mean like that. But what's at hand? What's the problem at hand? What are you trying to solve? What is this design addressing? Because there may be one way to solve the problem, and you can solve it this way. Maybe there's a better way to solve it, which you can solve improve in a subsequent sprint. But you just want to get conversion up for the time being, and then keep optimizing down the road. All of this is context, and all depends upon what the things we're actually talking about. But what Darren and Debbie said is 100%, 1,000% on the money. Your PO is acting irresponsibly. You don't do what he's doing.
Yeah, and as I said in some of my recent episodes, maybe episode 116 in live podcast, so that one is 2.5 hours, so check the chaptering. But we're about business intelligence and risk mitigation, and you need to speak with the PO about the risk of not testing this ahead of time. This is risk we could mitigate. So the idea that you might need a few days or a week to do that usability test and to find flaws, because we almost always get flaws when we do the testing. It rarely is like, oh my God, perfect. So now I tell people, testing is the QA of UX. You wouldn't release code without QA. This is our QA. We need to QA our concepts as well. So I would tell the PO it's QA for concepts and QA for the design. And the risk mitigation factor here is important because if we wait until it's voice of the customer and marketing and customer support, you are reactive, and that's not agile. That's not lean. You are super reactive, you are late, and you sure burned a lot of money on a guess. And what I would also tell the PO is, and I want you held accountable. You would think I'm going to be held accountable because it's my design. I want you held accountable because you don't want to do a QA step.
That was the other thing I wanted to comment on. If you, by the person asking this question, because we don't usually control things like this, we're trying to negotiate to get people to do things and hope that they will agree with us. If for whatever reason this thing gets deployed, make sure that it's documented that you recommended that testing be done before deployment. So when it crashes, and a lot of time we know when the space shuttle is going to crash, we know that, so to speak. So when it crashes, people will come back and you will have covered yourself. So, because unfortunately, it does happen.
And David says, that's been my point. User testing a live design with 200,000 customers is a horrible idea. Well, cost-benefit analysis of skipping our QA step. Nick, and then we'll move on.
That's not testing. That's called releasing. Big difference.
Well, you blipped out. That's called what?
One is user testing, and another is just releasing another version. They're releasing another untested version. It's ridiculous.
Agree. Okay, thank you. Moving on. Someone says, hi. Large services like Facebook or Reddit sometimes undergo a significant redesign, which is often met with backlash from users used to the status quo. How do you deal with that backlash?
All I heard was status quo, Facebook, and backlash. Sorry, I wasn't really tuned in.
Welcome back. It was when big companies do serious redesigns, there's typically a backlash from the people who don't like the change. How do you deal with that backlash? I've got my own answer, but I'm happy to go for you guys first.
I'll jump in quickly then.
Yes.
Change affects a certain percentage of the audience, whatever you do, and they're going to grumble no matter what happens. And so as long as you've tested it with everybody else, just get on with it. Also, progress sucks for some people. Tough shit. Get on with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to say, it's funny that he mentioned that the person asking the question mentioned Facebook and Reddit. And this goes back to something, I think I mentioned this on another episode. Some companies suffer from what I call design arrogance. They just do something. They don't intend on testing anything. I've been using Facebook. I won't touch Reddit. I'm allergic to Reddit, so to speak, because it's just terrible over there. It's just a cesspool of toxicity over there. But there's nothing enriching happening. But they just roll things out, and they don't even really listen a lot of times, even after they get feedback. They figure that they're so big that they can do whatever they want. Apple has been guilty of that in the past. Google has been guilty of that. A lot of big companies, they just roll things out. Shannon said it, test first. If you want to find out, you should only want to roll out what you know is going to work, or something that we have better expectations of, instead of just rolling the dice with a design that was birthed out of God knows what. It really shows a lack of care for the users, and we are the user. Us experienced designers, we are the advocates. We're the ones that are supposed to fight for that. Will we always get it? No, but we need to stand for it. And people are going to do crazy things, and Reddit and Facebook are just two companies that, among others, that happen to do things, and they don't care. So all we can do is advocate for it. That's the best we can do.
Sorry, I'm not seeing the emojis on the screen. I'm going to reboot the emojis. Nick, go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Keep going.
Oh, there they go.
Nice.
Nick, anything to add?
No, don't think so.
Oh, and the emoji explosion earlier was friend of the show, Ray, joined our paid YouTube subscription. Thank you for your support. Everyone knows it goes to me eating cheese. Okay, so, oh, and what I would add to that is I find that people react better to changes that are good. If your change is truly an upgrade and truly took users' tasks and needs into consideration, you're going to see much less backlash to it. I think a lot of this backlash is when these changes are not really upgrades, or they're dark patterns, or they're, like a lot of Facebook upgrades before I left Facebook, or so-called upgrades, were like things that put more ads in the feed and tried to keep me on the page longer. And it's like, well, that's not customer centric. So, I think that if we really create changes that were driven by customer needs and tasks, we're more likely to have less backlash. How about that?
They're never.
I remember what I wanted to say though.
Mental models.
What,
Sorry,
everyone?
Go ahead.
Nick, go ahead.
Darren, you said you said about talking to the PO not having care for users, and whilst that's great lingo that we all 100% are down with and understand, if you replace that with profitability or less cost or something that's a bit more commercial, then it absolutely gets them, and that's what we're really talking about. Because what gets us out of bed in the morning is care for users. What gets them out of money is making money for the higher ups, and that's what it's all about.
Yep, and we have to translate. I mean, I say that to us when we're talking to them. We have to. I call it speaking exec. We have to speak exec. Otherwise, they're not gonna get it.
Yep, and by the way, everyone is still maybe LinkedIn's a little slow today. They love that we suggested documenting the recommendation for testing to the previous person. So yes, document risks, always. Let's move on. Thanks, everybody. Next question, and don't forget, this is Office Hours Ask Us Anything. We're going to be here at least another hour, so get your questions in through the LinkedIn or YouTube chat room. They're first come, first served, and I've got a list I'm working on, or just above. Oh, thank you, Victor. And thanks earlier to Ray for joining. So thanks, everybody. So don't forget, you can also use deltacx.link/ask, which is above Nick's head, to send in your question. That link is good 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you send in a question with that and we are not here, we will save it for next week's show. David says, Agile says less documentation, but I document every decision for covering my butt. That's fake Agile and fake lean. That, yeah. Someone wrote, can you elaborate on speaking exec OKZ? I don't know what that means. So please explain that, Arda.
I think I know.
And
I don't know about the OKZ, but I know about the speak exec.
Let's just double check what Arda means. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay, Arda's okay. Thanks, Arda. We will put your question on the list. The next question on the list says, how do you handle research and design when the information is updating constantly due to, let's say, laws and rules given by the government? Also, content is very important in this space because it helps users decide what journey and which product to pick. Okay, how do you handle research and design when the information is updating constantly due to laws and rules? I think that was Charlene. Charlene, I think you stumped the panel. What did you mean?
No, I'm just thinking a lot.
Okay.
One of the things that comes to mind is when you know that that's the arena in which you work, where there are some kind of guidelines or stipulations or different changes, different things that happen from could be from a legal perspective. There's a lot of different things. Some of the terminology is slipping my mind at the moment, but I think everybody knows what I'm getting at. When you have different things that are updating on a regular basis, then that becomes part of your responsibility as an experienced designer in that arena, that anytime something comes up that can potentially change what's going on with the designs, folks need to meet, talk about what that change is, understand what it means to the experience that's currently out there and where the change is. Then you have to get busy to make sure that the changes get made so that everything can be up to par, and so you can match whatever those guidelines or whatever those stipulations are. So that's just part of fortunately, in some cases, when you're doing work, and some of us are not affected by that maybe as much as others, but some are affected a lot. And when you're affected, you can't do the work without always making yourself aware of the change and how the change affects the experience, and then get busy on it. High level, okay. But that's basically it.
And Charlene says it's related to COVID and PCR testing.
I was thinking about medical.
Okay.
Nick, anything to add there?
Not really. And when you're in such a time as a pandemic or something where you have a rapidly evolving medical situation and the human factors advisory changes, the immunology, virology, I don't know, all this other stuff are changing. As a designer, you have to go with those. It's unfortunate. It's so less than ideal. But what else are you going to do? You can't say, no, I'm not doing that. You've got to be as current as possible. And when knowledge is progressing as quickly as it can, and you've got to, listen, these might be options in a registration form to donate plasma, for example, or sign up for a vaccination. It might be those changes, in which case, what are we talking about? I mean, you're not changing a page design, you're changing content within a CMS or in your prototype, and that's no big deal. That's a couple of clicks. So I
Go with the flow,
maybe,
baby.
yeah, exactly. Those in such times, you have to be even more lightweight and disposable as ever, because it's going to constantly change. So don't invest too much in anything, because you're going to need to burn it pretty quickly.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe
Yep.
work in medium fidelity.
Or very low fidelity.
What?
Very low fidelity, like me, black and white.
Paper prototype. No, I'm kidding.
Okay,
So, okay, next one. What is storytelling in UX? How can one improve it? What's good storytelling and bad storytelling? Is there a way to get better at it? What's a connection between UX and storytelling skills? That's the one question asked 5 ways. Beautiful job, anonymous person asking that question 5 ways. So basically, storytelling in UX and how do we get better at it?
Dr. Nick, you starting?
Okay. I want to say what you guys are going to say, though. So I guess who wants to take it first? From my perspective, storytelling is critically important to UX, because you are leading not leading. Yeah, you are leading the user to an extent. It's kind of part of the pathway and the scenery that they're going on. That story, that narrative, especially in e-commerce, can be particularly important, but also in public health messaging and other, communication forms. The storytelling is very important. I'm not going to say critically important, because it depends. UX is a big old area. I can't see storytelling have much value in research, but I'm sure someone will find one somewhere. It's more of a design metaphor in my mind, because it's talking about the way we deliver information or the narrative that we give to users. And like I say, that's critically important depending upon the application of the thing that you're doing. In order to learn it, there are formulae, if you know what I mean. There are ways of storytelling. I have been in an agency, ironically, where storytelling was a really big deal, because to designers, storytelling is massive into a traditional design. So that's how I kind of learned my bit. But you can learn it anywhere. Like anything, especially UX, you have to practice it in loads of different contexts and different projects for it to mean anything. So that's my longest answer, sorry.
It was beautiful. Darren?
Okay, 3 bullet points for me. Number 1, storytelling is about laying a foundation, having the meat of your story, the main component, and then your climax. So storytelling consists of these main 3 points. And so whether we're communicating with users, stakeholders, clients, whoever the audience is, and the audience will shift in almost any given instance, we need to be able to communicate effectively. That's really what storytelling is how do we communicate effectively based on who we have audience with at any given. And one of the key things in storytelling that's critical is that we need to be really good at saying as much as we possibly can with as few words as possible.
Economy
Especially
of words.
if you're talking to, and like earlier we talked about speaking exec. One of the keys associated with speaking exec is that you really, now, if you could say it in 2 minutes to everybody, you need to be able to say it in maybe 30 to 45 seconds to somebody who's higher up the food chain and closer to the C-suite, because they are just not, they will check out if you get long-winded. So that's going to be problematic. The third bullet point that I have is that storytelling is impactful with the work that we do, whether we're reporting out, telling a story about, even like I think about research, if you're telling a story about the research, that's going to be storytelling. When you're talking about what's going on in that slideshow where you're showing the results, that's still storytelling. So it's impactful with the work. It's also impactful with the job search. When you're a candidate for a position and you're being interviewed, you need to be able to, I was telling some people yesterday at the book club, You have to be good at telling your story. Somebody was talking about how they want to be able to walk people through their PowerPoint to show people their process or through their portfolios. I told them that's still a portfolio. It's not your portfolio, but still it's an extract. So it's still your portfolio, even though it's not your portfolio. And I said, but it's interesting that I found that people who are more skilled are less interested in your portfolio than the job evaluator, the hiring manager who's less skilled. But the common denominator is the storytelling. We need to be able to tell our story. We need to be able to tell the story about the work that we did. And so storytelling it just has value across the board. And I love what Dr. Nick said about the issue of practicing. You can practice storytelling. You can get better at it. You can tell a story about the movie you went to see. You can tell a story about the website you visited. You can tell a story about the bad experience. I did one once on LinkedIn, and we're talking about the bad experience that I got the message from UPS about a package being delivered. And then the subject line had the primary message. Then when you go into the message, the primary message was now presented as the secondary call to action. And so, but I clicked the primary. So it's just sort of weird, but just telling that story, these things happen. See Debbie's eyes. Storytelling is important. It's something that will benefit us at almost any given time. And it's whether we realize it or not, it's probably something we tap into more than anything else we do as UX professionals. We don't realize
I'm running lines from the young ones in my head. Nick, anything to add to that?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
I agree with you. You're good. Okay. Nothing to add there. And yes. Okay. Next. Most of the businesses I work with are heavily invested in quantitative data and ignore qualitative approaches. It's almost as if talking with their customers one-on-one would somehow hurt them. I know dashboards are sexy and appealing, but how do I communicate the value of doing user research to a non-UX person or people who think UX is UI? We're going to be covering this later this month with special guest Michelle Ronson. That got rescheduled for, I think, July. Oh, now I don't remember, 29. I think July 29, Michelle Ronson's going to cover that. But let's see if our special guest match game contestants have an answer here. User research is not market. I can't tell you how many people on LinkedIn are chasing me down and sending me private messages, these old school market researchers who tell me, oh, UX research is nothing new. Good market researchers have always been doing all of the techniques that you use. And I'm just like, and?
Yeah. Fuck off.
I'm like, just you. So far, all the market research I've seen has been surveys and guesses. So, ma'am, I think it's just you.
It's like there's a time for market research, there's a place for it, but they are not interchangeable by any stretch of the imagination. The one thing I did want to mention, though, about the question, the way that you can get them to understand it, show them I love, what do we call it? I just say you can do work when you can, that the team doesn't necessarily know about it. I talk about doing journey maps when the team, just so you can help understand the depth of what you're working on. It doesn't mean that you have to present it to the team, but you still have it done. It's like an undercover kind of, that's the word I'm thinking of. Undercover work where you are performing qualitative research. Just share the results. You don't have to tell them where it came from. Just share the results. When they start doing backflips over your wonderful qualitative data that you've presented, and then after they do that 3 or 4 times, and you can let the cat out of the bag, and now that the proof is in the pudding. Once the proof is there, people don't tend to fight against proof too much. But I would do it and not tell them.
Fun.
That's what I would do. Find a way to do
puddings, cats, and bags. That's our first album. Nick, add to that, please.
Yes. The important thing to notice here, we're talking about sources of insight or sources of data, potential insight, qualitative and quantitative. The sensible, logical, best way to do things is to take both data perspectives qualitative and
Yes.
quantitative, because that's going to help you get a fuller picture. Neither is ideal or perfect in any which way, and together it's a difficult, but together you've got the best chance. Like insight equals qualitative and quantitative, they're both different sides of the same coin. You should be able to try to use your quants to be informed by your quals. And I hate abbreviating them like that because I sound like a market researcher, but it's just easier to say. No, I'm sorry.
No, you pulled up your sign. UX research is not market research.
Anyway, the point
It's a magic trick.
Yeah. So no, that's it. Seriously, you do use the quants to inform the quals to inform the quants.
Darren.
I was going to say too, because I forgot the one thing we almost usually have to always say when you talk about quantitative and qualitative. Sometimes we have to. I mean, this sort of makes me think about how I'm a big advocate for establishing some type of a push-pull knowledge resource for UX to help drive maturity in the workplace, because it's important when people fight against qualitative. They don't realize I'll give them that mulligan on that. They don't always, when they're fighting against it without having any understanding, that means that they don't realize that quantitative is letting people know what they're doing or how they're feeling, but they don't have any explanation until they get into the qualitative. Well, one of the ways to help them to, I don't know how many people buy into this, but if you had some type of a knowledge resource that was providing insight about research, providing insight about qualitative, qual and mixed, I'll go ahead and throw that out there, and letting people know what the benefits are, where they can tap into that when they're not necessarily interacting with you. I found that to be extremely valuable, because people are more likely to take something in when there's nothing at stake. If you get my drift, if there's a project that what you're trying to educate them about is tied to, you're more likely to experience resistance. But if you just present it just in a generic kind of a environment or format cognitively, people are more likely to take it in. And I'll be able to cover a lot of ground with that in places I've worked in the past, because they just have this information they can tap into at any time. And people love to learn because they like feeling smart. They're like Loki. They like being smart.
Thank you, Disney Plus, hashtag not sponsored. Before I give my answer here, over on LinkedIn, where I can't put the comments up on the screen, Seth says, happy belated birthday for last week, Nick. So yes, Nick's birthday last week, everybody, 7/7.
Thank you very much.
Put it in your calendar. What I want to add to the whole question about quant and qual data. Oh, Darren, I was going to say, someone's in a tornado. My thought is that sometimes companies prefer quant because they think it's cheaper to run a survey than to have people work on days of interviews and days of analysis. But also, quant is easier to manipulate. So it's much harder to manipulate qual, where I've got a video of customers drowning in your terrible interface. It's that one's a little bit hard to ignore. But if we take a survey, like someone was telling me today that someone at their job took a survey and then was trying to prove something was going better than it was. So they statistically combined all the neutral scores on something with all the positive scores on something to try to make it look like more people liked this. And so I think sometimes there's a love of quant because it seems a cheap way to get feedback, and then it's really easy for someone to take it and turn it into pretty much whatever they want it to say. And so you have to look out for that. If you see them doing that, I would find a way to call them on it or compare it to your qual data, where the two are probably not going to match. Nick, you look like you have something to add?
Yeah, we can have this debate or fight or riot or whatever. I'm going to say something controversial, which isn't controversial to most psychologists, but will be controversial to everybody else in the world. Surveys are not quantitative data.
What are they?
That actually, this is a heavy philosophical discussion. You can argue it both ways. Is the bottom line. and there's probably pretty strong arguments on both sides of that argument. It's a difficult argument. That's a whole nother show. The way I'm looking,
we'll schedule
is
that.
just because you make a Likert scale, you're not necessarily quantification is about measuring something, right? Measuring this or measuring that, what have you, right? You could measure attitude, but how the validity of that is there's so much going on here. Yes.
Yeah.
Let's not even crack this one open. It's a massive another thing.
You cracked it open. Now I'm gonna have to pull you back. Back off from the microphone, young man. All right. The next question, if this person's here, we might need a little bit of clarification on it, but it says, what's your thoughts on self-correction as part of individual growth? Is this something designers should be investing time and energy on?
I'm going to jump in first on this one.
Go on, man.
Yeah, this made me think about some of the people who are on the call probably heard my podcast episode, and I've done a talk on what I call the UX cycle of excellence. And part of that cycle is that you constantly have to be in a mode of self-evaluation. And when you identify knowledge and skill gaps, then you want to be pretty diligent to make sure that you're addressing it. Be patient with yourself, which is also part of the cycle, but you need to be able to identify what's going on. Be courageous. Don't be like some people. When they find out that they lack something, they will lash out at the source. They'll lash out at the mailman when they find out that they lack something. But it's good for us to, because I'm assuming self-correction is talking about correction of self as it would imply. When you find out that you lack, you just go after it, and it's no big deal. We've all been there. We will continue to be there. We never stop growing as experienced design professionals. So we always find something to dig in deeper on, or something to expose ourselves to more. So self-correction is critical. Those who feel they have arrived will always pretty much be a threat to themselves and to others, because they'll give people a sense of toxic positivity, and they'll feel that they are no longer in need of certain things. So yeah, we need to always be in a mode of self-correction.
Nick.
Yeah, just to finish. Yeah, Darren basically nailed it with when he said, I laughed when the question was first asked because I thought it was a joke. I thought, like, if you're not doing it, why not? That's exactly what Darren said at the end, kind of like you should be doing it all the time, basically. I'm self-correcting all the time. I hope other people are helping to correct or inform me, or data is informing me. There's lots of correction points, if you know what I mean. Maybe this is a generational thing. I don't know, because there's so many things that I assumed are just life that are being questioned now. Like, I think that's a symptomatic question of this look good generation, like, ooh, Instagram selfies, look at me, all of this self attention. When you're meant to be portraying this facade, this thin veneered front, which isn't real. Just forget all that stuff. Be yourself. Ugly is beautiful. Just keep going, man. Sorry, Darren, keep going, dude.
I want to chime in because I know Debbie's going to have something to say on this. I wanted to jump in. I had a conversation with somebody on LinkedIn, I think it was yesterday, and the person was asking me about a post I put out there, and it had to do with people, the way that people evaluate. You folks might have seen this post, the way that people evaluate candidates for UX jobs. And some kind of way, the conversation went in the direction of confidence. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I wasn't talking about confidence. I was talking about qualification. And at the end of the conversation, I mentioned to the person, they kept talking about confidence. It just kept coming up. I said, well, I really don't care about confidence. What I'm more concerned about competence than confidence. And see, that confidence thing is on the same line of what we're getting at, that a lot of people, when they find out that they lack somewhere, they feel like they've taken a blow to their confidence. But if you find out you're lacking, it opens up a door for you to increase your competence. So confidence is a bit deceiving in that it takes us down a road of, do we want to be confident? Yes. but you want to be accurate in your confidence. And I think competence, it opens up. Oh, what's that? Oh, I don't know what that was. That takes care of, competence will take care of confidence. You will be confident when you're competent. And I told them a story of somebody I knew who bowled a 300 game, and all the person did was focus on what they could have done better. The score said 300, but the person didn't execute. So the focus was on the execution, because if you bowl 300, you're going to be lucky somewhere. You weren't perfect. Your score says you were perfect, but you know you weren't perfect. And so it's about execution. And then the person said, okay, I get it.
This reminds me of something my grandfather once said to me when he was debating me for fun. He had asked me to tell him stories about the terrible financial ruin the company I worked for was in, and I was explaining it to him, and he didn't believe me. And I kept telling him, I said, no, I've seen their bills and their credit card receipts. These people are in complete ruin. I don't know how they're still open. And this went on for like 40 minutes. And finally, my grandfather, who was an old New York lawyer, said, "You're full of shit, yet you sound so confident." And that always stays with me. And I was like, I am not full of shit. I've seen their. So I like to say that sometimes to people in my head. You're full of shit, yet you sound so confident.
People are actually mouthing it to each other behind a mask.
There you go.
You know,
the next question is extremely interesting. Not that some of these haven't been, but we're getting back into some meaty stuff. Which career path do you think will help senior UX researchers to have more impact in a tech company? Individual contributor or manager? Would remaining an individual contributor be a disadvantage for a researcher in the long run?
That's a good question.
Wow.
I thought you'd like that.
I can use me as an example.
Nick?
Because that's all I know is that I would consider myself successful, and I've been a practitioner the whole way. You know, there was a small stint where I was a head of research, head of user experience at an agency, but again, I was still working on projects and still doing all that stuff. Hello, yay, wait, whoever just subscribed or donated cheese money.
Thank you.
In a tech company, because if it's engineering heavy, they will respect the individual. At least that's what I like about tech and IT, is that they handle the individual and skills far better. So you can be a neurodiverse person, as long as you're an awesome coder or engineer or whatever you're doing. That's what matters, and that's my mentality, really. Our world in the digital side of things isn't quite the same. Yeah, that's all I really have on that.
My 2 cents on this one, probably lightning round this one on myself, self-imposed lightning round. I think the success is different. I think when you can drive a lot of success as an individual contributor, and you can drive a lot of success as a manager, but I think that the types of success vary between the two. So it depends upon what a person is going after, what the company is in need of, what the team is in need of. Because if the team is in need of certain types of impact and success that's only achieved at the level of leadership, the manager is going to drive that. The manager can do more to impact that than the individual contributors can, because the manager just has audience that the individual contributors will not. So it depends. They're both impactful, but we just have to be aware of what the needs are, and we need to be aware of our limitations in such roles as well. I mean, I've done research at companies where there was a team lead, there was a manager, but they weren't necessarily helping us when it came to driving success with research. So we had more impact as individual contributors than that person did, because they were a team lead. They were not a manager of research. But if somebody, there's a lot of different moving parts to this, but it depends.
Can I add one last thing? Sorry. Research is much more likely to be respected in an IT tech engineering firm because it's effectively science-based thinking, evidence-based thinking, whatever you call that, and that's their world. So they'll be much more receptive of it and much more supportive of it, rather than digitally led things, which can have a tendency to be marketing led rather than science, or that's the mindset, and that's all about my ego, my rock star, my vision, all that malarkey.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to reload all the emojis, so they might all go off. So yeah, Kayleen's square wheel and everything. What I was going to add is that to me it's more about what you want to do. Not everybody wants to be a manager, and very often a manager is a people manager and may or may not have the authority to create strategy company wide or even for the department. Sometimes that's at the director level or the head of level or a VP level. So it's up to you. Not everybody wants to do people managing and that type of operational stuff. So I would say, see if that's in your heart. But I would hope that in general in a company that managers do have the opportunity to create more change. And I would love to see more researchers moving into management and leadership because as Darren will agree, and maybe Dr. Nick might, we're seeing too many unqualified people failing their way up into management, coming in as visual designers or creative directors or print designers, and somehow 30 minutes later, head of UX. Hey, Peaches is here. Peaches says, depends on the company too. There are places where moving back and forth between IC and manager isn't seen as a promotion or a demotion, just a chance to build different skills. Good point. Is that our usual Peaches person or a new Peaches person?
If it wasn't for, I was a CTO in the dot-com boom and, all that big stuff, sitting on a board, lots of, I hated it. I really hated it. And I actually did a master's and a PhD to reset my career. And I came into HCI and UX that way as a kind of disgusted CTO. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to do that. That's not how I want to spend my days. I don't consider that success. That's just not for me personally. I know everyone is different, but sitting in meetings with other people's egos and opinions, I'd rather throw myself out the window. Literally. No, thank you. Not for me. So we do what we do.
Do not throw yourself out the window. We need you. Okay, the next question is a multiple choice question. And so I'm trying to find a way to put the choices on the screen. The question said, how should a user story be defined in your opinion? And your choices are option 1, thing a user needs to be able to do in the user's words. Option 2, technical development requirement necessary to implement the thing a user needs to be able to do. Option 3, something else.
Option 1 is the quick answer. Option 4, why are we doing this? This is user stories. This is not UX, right? This is delivery. This is product management. This is somebody else's job, not ours.
Good question. Normally we aren't writing user stories.
I mean, I've written a lot of user stories, and it was always, that 3-phase, that 3 steps, and that was it. And we would talk about it among the team. Sometimes it was usually about, the end of the story is what the benefit is going to be. I would find a hard time fathoming that through option 2.
It's definitely not
development requirement. It doesn't need a technical development requirement. Does not turn into a user story under any circumstances.
No. But the technical development.
That's going to be more of acceptance criteria. The technical development is going to be more in the acceptance criteria, from what I understand. The user story, as it is called, is user or persona or target audience needs to do thing
X
because of or to achieve, for For
That's it.
why? So it's going to be closer to your one here. It's supposed to be user.
Yes.
One of the worst user stories I ever saw was, um, um, as the QA lead, I need users to do this so I can close this story. I was like, no, there's another one I saw. As a product manager, I need users to do this. And I was like, oh no, that's not how we do this. So user stories, and this is Googleable, are supposed to be a general description of what a feature generally does, or a piece of a feature generally does, from the perspective of the user, in one of Agile's continuously vain hopes to get people in the Agile world to pretend they care about what customers want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, this isn't open for debate. It is option 1, right? It is not option 2. There should be no discussion.
Fuck all y'all.
No, but it's that's
And
you ask
scene.
100 product folk or 100 delivery folk, and that's the answer you're going to get. The problem is because people write user needs in the same syntax. User needs and user stories get completely, like user testing and user acceptance testing, they get confused too. They're not the same things.
Yes,
Sorry.
Exactly. I'm not surprised to hear somebody ask that question, because it's funny. Somebody will say, we're doing Agile, and I would always freeze and I wait to find out what they mean when they say that, because I've never, I've been working in and out of Agile since about 2012, and not 2 companies have I ever worked at that do Agile the same way. They take it and they brand it. They literally branded it at one company I worked at. They took it and made it akin to the company's name, and what they were doing, we ended up calling it Agile Fall. That's what we jokingly called it, because it wasn't Agile.
Fragile.
So to see somebody do something weird with user stories, I'm not surprised to hear that.
My favorite is still, as a product manager, I need users too. No, that's not a user story.
Ridiculous.
No.
And then they start solutioning right behind that.
Well, thanks, Lean UX. Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
A recent gig, because I don't want to give away any confidences, right? The guy said, yeah, but we're Agile. And I actually kind of said, no, I kind of exploded. I was like, no, you're not Agile. Just having a 10-minute stand-up each morning, that doesn't make you Agile. And that was literally it.
Right. I mean, calling your time block a sprint doesn't make you Agile.
No, but they weren't even time blocking sprints. It was just, we meet at 9:30 every morning for a 10-minute chat. It's so far.
How nice for you.
Yeah, those were good times.
Yeah, all right. And Peaches sends us these emoji and says, people often confuse user stories with job stories. So many stories. Okay, next on the list was the person who said, can you elaborate on speaking exec? Darren, you seemed ready to field this one when it came by. Speaking exec, what's it sound like?
In short, it's basically speaking in language that your stakeholders and clients and leaders will understand. One of the things I've seen over the course of my career, I'm sure we all have, that UX people tend to speak in our language. We talk to people about things that are important to us. And one of the stories I told recently in explaining this was how, thank God, my health is back to normal and such, and hopefully all these weird things that happened are over. But when I was in the hospital last year, just a little quick 3-day stay, and as I had a bout of vertigo, and they kept me for observation. What I noticed was weird. When you're a UXer, you never take your hat off. I'm laying in the bed, and the guy and the gal are there talking. They're speaking to one another, and they're speaking in medical speak, or we could call it doctor speak. Then one of them turned around to talk to me, and when they talk to me in patient speak. That's something that UX people, and I'm like, and I'm observing this whole thing, and I'm like, I'm not even thinking about my health at the moment. I'm marveling at the excellence in which they communicated. And I'm like, we need to do that as UXers. We talk about wireframes, we talk about prototypes, we talk about whatever. And then thank you, Kayleen. And then a lot of times we turn right around after talking to one another, and then we talk to everybody else, and we speak with the same terminology. We have the same value system. We don't talk about things that mean anything to them, and we lose them. And so we need to be able to, we need to
Nick.
learn. It takes a concentrated, deliberate effort to learn how to communicate with people in leadership and with clients, to talk about what's important to them. We need to do what we talk about, mental models of users. Well, technically, our clients and our stakeholders in leadership, they are users too.
Is speaking exec the same as speaking the business's language?
Yes. Basically, yes.
Nick, what do you want to add?
But Darren's absolutely, I mean, with regard to what Darren is saying, medics of all types have been through a rigorous quality control training program. You know, they've had experiential learning through the various ranks. It's a good analogy for our design and UX world, because it's very similar in that respect. Medics can talk efficiently and a certain way within each other because they have the same backgrounds and they have the common semantics. In UX, we don't have any of that. So unless it's like the three of us and we've spoken a lot together, we have agreed semantics. You don't get that same thing with other people. And in order to get that nirvana that Darren's talking about, we need better UX standardization and experiential training, mentorship, etc.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to move on then, since we have lots more questions and only about 40 minutes left. Then everyone gets a pee break and we go to sleep. The next question is, we do it all again in a month.
In that order. I did it wrong.
In that order. Next question is medium sized. So listen up, y'all. I'm having a dilemma as a UXR because on my team, I feel like I'm often the last person to find out about anything. Product design and product managers will go off and collaborate on new designs together, have design sprints, and drum up vision documents for the team, but only come to me for testing. I feel like I should be part of strategy and input into this work, but I've only been a researcher for about 3 years, so I don't always feel confident about butting in. Any advice on how to be assertive about getting involved or demonstrating the value of having a UXR in these sessions? No crying.
I'll defer on this one. I want to think for a minute.
Okay.
Okay, I'll fill in. Unless you want to, Debbie.
No, go ahead, Nick. I like to let you guys go first.
So there's the D word, which isn't Debbie. This time it's discovery. You know, I feel like discovery is a bit like the grubby, dirty side of UX, because it's a bit analogous to real market research sometimes. And let's be truthful, it really is. Discovering about, in a qualitative or even quantitative way, but discovering about the world in a kind of hypothetical way, without. It sounds to me that your product people going to design sprints there and doing these vision things, they're hypothesizing. That's what it sounds like, and it makes a lot more sense to be doing that in a more structured way with a user researcher helping you do that, rather than guessing, which is what these guys probably are doing. But sometimes guessing or, artistic, what do they call it? That stuff does work. That would just, have a lightning bolt, but it's at high risk, in which case you as a user researcher are there to help balance and kind of spread that risk. You see what I mean? Make sure when I say harebrained ideas, you know what I mean? Make sure they've got legs, got some weight, got some validity to it. There we go, Darren. I bought you time. Your turn.
Yeah, I'm going to take a shot and let me know if I hit the nail on the head with this one, because I got a terrible message while Debbie was reading that one and I got distracted. So let me know. Are you okay? Oh no, it's good. It's just a frustrating message I just received. But
sorry.
3 things come to mind based on what I heard, and I hope I'm hearing correctly. But 3 things come to mind because we've been there. It's frustrating to be in that scenario where you feel like you're like an also ran. You're there, but you're not there. You're not really being acknowledged the way that you should be. So the dynamics that you expect to have, the interpersonal dynamics that you expect to have, are not happening. And so three things come to mind. One is I frequently talk about the importance of relationship management. It's never enough to do the UX work, ever. Because the relationship, we do the work and then we manage the relationships. So when you have something like that that's happening, the relationship management will help to sort of buffer you and help you to fill any gaps or attend to anywhere where you're not finding things out. You're being left out. You're being forgotten. You're being overlooked. You're being discounted. The relationship management will help to buffer you. Number two is emotional intelligence comes into mind, and how important that is to UX, because the more emotionally intelligent we are, the better it helps us to really hit on the third point. So I'll sort of make this a 2A and a 2B, navigation. The more emotionally intelligent we are, whether the environment is more mature or less mature, it really just helps us to optimize the scenarios regardless of what happens. And even when you're in a company that is mature, there are still those weird one-off situations that come up where we're not recognized, or we are ignored, or we are pushed off to the side, things of that nature. It's frustrating, but it happens. So we're better off to be prepared. I had a situation recently where I went on vacation. I'm just going to say it. I don't care if somebody from my current job is listening, which I doubt. I went on vacation. When I came back from vacation, I saw a message where somebody said, and I'm the only UX person on my team. Keep that in mind. The only UX person on my team. I've been practicing since 95. I'll give you the background of how maybe you'll imagine how I felt when the thing I'm about to mention to you happened. Everybody on the team knows it. They know my background, everything. I come back from vacation and somebody says, hey, I just finished doing some work with person X. And if anybody on the team needs any help with UX, reach out to person X.
Oh boy.
Not reach out to Darren.
Oh boy.
Reach out to person X. And guess what? Person X is a mentee of mine.
Oh boy.
That's pretty bad.
Ouch.
That's pretty underhanded. That they know. The same person, when I do need help for something because I don't know the landscape of the entire everything that's going on in our environment, because I'm still learning it, didn't offer me any help. They never talked to me. They never say anything of that sort. This is bad. This is really, really bad. But it's the relationship management. Somebody else stepped up and became a buffer for me in the midst of that gross disrespect. I'm very intolerant of disrespect. I didn't do anything to be disrespected. I had to navigate through it, and the emotional intelligence helps me to maintain to some extent. But these types of things, we don't like to see it, and there's really no excuse for it a lot of the times. But the truth is that it happens. So it's like being a defensive driver. If you want to get home, being a defensive driver is one of your best things you can do to getting home, because there's always somebody on the road that's not going to do their best. And I think the same thing happens in UX and just in life in general. So,
and we have more questions, so I want to make sure we have time for them. But what I would add to all of this is, to the UXR, it might not be you. It might not be that you're not being aggressive enough to butt in. The people on this team sound like they're under a lot of pressure to just go fast, even if that means guessing and even if that means low quality. So I might check in with my manager and say, hey, I'm the UXR for this team. I want to be doing generative research. They only have me doing evaluative research. Can we start doing some planning where there's enough time for me to do some generative research so that I can inform this? We might have had a little bit of a blip there, but hopefully everybody is still with us. Oz is here, and Oz has a question for us, which I'm going to read. Yeah, Oz is here. Excel on fire. And he says, Debbie, I'm here. And he sent me this question through LinkedIn. And it says, how much change can be too much? I'm thinking about the overwhelm I feel when a website changes their shopping cart icon. Then they change its location. Then the navigation pane is no longer open. The user has to toggle it on and off. After a while, I want to scream, stop fucking with me. but they might point to what research shows and what best practices are and what most people seem to want. Is there a discipline that studies this?
Funny that.
Oz. Yes, Oz, you're in the right place. Let's talk about this. Let's start with Nick. Nick, what are companies doing wrong when they are making these tiny incremental, death by 1,000 incremental changes?
Look, the way I look at all of these things is, if you're going to this website, wherever it is you're going, having this experience, and you're still able to achieve what you were before, assuming it's not an entertainment website, or it's entertainment's part of this, right? But generally speaking, if you're able to do it, but yet they changed the style of something, or the look and feel of it, or the look of it in particular, then I kind of want to say get over it, snowflake. But that's just my personal opinion. And we are talking about form and function. I just happen to be a function kind of guy. That's just my slightly warped or biased perspective, you know. Yeah, the discipline is called It Depends, Marisol. Spot on. Yeah, that's kind of it, really. It depends on the change, but we talked about this earlier. Some people just don't react well to any change, no matter how good it is or in their interest. It's just different, and they just don't like different. And sometimes you have to, as long as you've got all the other validation you need, the confidence that you need to do these changes, then people get over that. It's not like, I hate you, brand, I'm walking away. It's just like, I don't like the new green and blue. Okay, big deal. You know, they get over it. It's a change. But other ones, like, I don't like the new things. I literally can't find my contact list. Sorry.
Yeah, I want to jump in on this one, especially because Oz is a buddy, and I want to give him the answer that I think I know him well enough to know what kind of answer he's looking for. So Oz, let me explain this to you. In our world, if people were to hire the Darrens and the Debbies and the Nicks and the Larrys and some of the other many people in this room, of course, Marisol, Aitan, all these people, if they were to hire us, we would not take this tiny piecemeal. Yeah, Oz says, my question isn't about resistance to change. It's about constant piddly stuff. If they were to hire us, we're looking at people's tasks and we're looking at how to make your task better, more efficient, easier to learn, easier to use. We typically don't get caught up in like, let's change this icon or let's move this icon over here. So based on my experience, my guess would be that you have run into a website, or I'm assuming it's a website, but you've run into a website that is run by the marketing team. And what happens is very often a marketing team doesn't want to work with a UX team because they imagine they're good at websites. But what happens is a marketing team will A/B test stuff to death. And what they'll do is they'll say, I wonder which makes us more money, this shopping cart icon or this shopping cart icon. Let's show half the people one and half the people another. Or we think this icon's better, just change that this week. When I've seen what you're talking about, Oz, it's typically from the marketing department, and they're typically refusing to work with people like us, who would, of course, try to check and balance them and say, what are you really doing here? What are your goals? What are your KPIs? What are you trying to change for the user? Because chances are the user needs something better on this website than just a different shopping cart icon. And so I would say, Oz, a lot of this, he's putting up light bulbs. A lot of this tends to be a marketing department that is either doing everything by micro experiment. Oh, I wonder if we sell more if we put the shopping cart over here than if we put it over here. I wonder if we sell more when the button's a little bit bigger than when it was smaller. And typically it's people who are not people we would see as website experts, but they see themselves as website experts because they often get the website ownership at a lot of these companies, and they just they think that the way to better they don't care what your experience is. Their goal is to make the business more money. And so the idea is that they will figure out, okay, how do we make the business more money? Bigger shopping cart icon, more discount codes at the top, a pop-up putting people on the mailing list, a countdown timer saying you have to buy in the next 7 minutes. To me, this is stuff that marketing does, that if you had anybody in the chat room or any of us, we wouldn't let this happen, because we know this isn't the path to customer centricity. Oh my God, Oz just said $20. Oh my God. Oz, thank you so much. I think he liked my answer. It hasn't come up on the screen yet. Here it goes.
Wow.
Wow, that's a lot of, just a big lump of cheese, man.
That's giant cheese. Thank you, Oz, so much. Oh my gosh. I haven't seen Oz in too long. Thank you, Oz. Super sweet. I think he liked my answer, but Darren, go ahead.
Yeah, I like Debbie. I'm glad Debbie went before me because I think it's better for me to have piggybacked on that one. I think that I love what she said. A lot of it is marketing. There's also another newbie to this space of how can we call it, inordinate changes to websites, and it's the advent of product. There are times that product is involved, that where a lot of product designers today, truth be told, I know a lot of times it looks like they're just marketing folks wearing a UX hat, and a lot of times that's true. There are some people with the title product, and they're really doing UX work. They just happen to be called product for whatever the reason might be. But I know about people who have the title product, and all they are marketing people masquerading as UX folks. And these are the people that like to, you go over somebody's house and their furniture in the living room is changed around every time you go over there. These people who just move furniture for the sake of moving furniture. And so the pieces on the website are just nothing but pieces of furniture to them, so to speak. And so they just move things. There's no rhyme. There's no reason. Something I didn't get to say earlier, but I think it fits here also. The people in that ilk don't really understand mental models of users. And it's not about what benefits the users. It's all about what benefits us. It's all about what benefits the business. And they miss that sweet spot on that Venn diagram of user needs, business needs, and constraints. And everything is going in the direction of the business. They have the Venn diagram, but they don't realize that all the dots are over in the business needs area, with very seldom touching on what's going on with the users. So things just get changed. And then we get left, the user gets left out in the cold, frustrated, and nobody cares. I saw a great article yesterday, and they said that customer centricity, there's a lack of customer centricity because it's profitable. Great article. I can't remember where that was. I can't remember if it was like Wired or where, and I didn't get to share it yet, but it's true.
And I'm going to have to switch us, I'm going to have to switch us to the lightning round because we have a half hour left and 7 questions.
Yes.
Oz also appreciates what you said when you talked about all the dots are in the business needs area. Yeah, another great way to put it. It's sadly true. And everybody, don't forget to follow Oz on YouTube, Excel on Fire. If you want to know something about Excel, #not sponsored, you want to learn it from Oz. So the next question, lightning round, is what are some of the ways you suggest for in-house or agency UX researcher with 7+ years of experience to move away from corporate and start freelancing or consulting on their own? What are the pros and cons? When's a good time to explore this?
I've done this. I did this. I spent 4 or 5 years, or maybe 3 or 4 years, as a permanent member of staff, and then moved to contracting. I've been doing that for 7 or 8. The pros and cons, it depends on which country you're in. From the sounds of it, you're not in the UK, which is a good thing because we've got this new taxation law here, which has destroyed our contract market. It's called IR35. So I'll apply this to, I think, more generally speaking. A lot of the issues that you hear today, and in Debbie's channel, they are ubiquitous. They really are. This is, the world is changing, blah, blah, blah. Being a contract member of staff means you can walk away. And the analogy that I use with everybody that always gets a bit of a giggle is it's a bit like having one night stands versus getting married, right? If you're a permanent member of staff, it's like getting married. There's a formal contract there. Getting divorced is painful, and stuff happens. You've got to leave. It's a big breakup. Whereas if you're just being a bit of a tart and you're kind of a one-night stands person, there's no really heavy commitment, and you can leave whenever you want. Likewise, they can leave you whenever they want. And I like that style of working in a turbulent world like digital, because all those woes that you hear people talking about in interviews, all the shenanigans that go on, once you get on the other side of that, you find out that it's just more of the same, that the interview wasn't true. It was all aspirational. And you've just made a major life or career decision based on what was aspirational lies. That happened to me 3 or 4 times. And I said, fuck you, I'm not doing this anymore. And I walked away from the whole thing. And that's the benefit of contracting. The downside is you don't get anything. You don't get sick pay. You don't get sympathy. You get treated like shit by everybody. You don't get any recognition. The amount of amazing work that I've done that gets other people's names on it, you see what I mean? You get paid well, you get paid better. And that's the way it used to be in the UK until these laws changed, and that's why now contracting is dead. But in other parts of the world, I would recommend contracting because it gives you experience in other, you get to turbocharge your experience because you're jumping around more legally, if you know what I mean. You're not having short-term engagement with permanent people, which is always a big bad thing on a CV. So, but you have to spend 3 or 4, maybe 5 years getting really comfortable in your core skill set, because when you go freelance, it is hairy, it's difficult. You'll be learning hard and fast, but you'll come out the other side after a couple of years, if you can survive that, a much better practitioner. That's it in a nutshell.
Darren, something to add in the lightning round?
Sorry,
yeah, mine will be really short. So Dr. Nick was able to use my time because I'm not going to say much. I have experience as a freelance web designer, but I have not done any freelancing really from a UX perspective. The only thing that I was throwing here, and Debbie and I actually talked about this not too long ago, because I had an opportunity that came up that I ended up not getting into. If you're going to, and maybe this might be more stateside, then again, it might be more global, and Debbie and Dr. Nick can confirm this. If you're going to do contracting or freelancing, you need to make sure you have the appropriate insurance. And so make sure that you're aware of how much that's going to cost you and be ready for that. That's the only thing I have to add to that part, to this part of that question.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly put yourself out there as a freelancer or a consultant and see what happens. But sometimes, especially with the job market the way it is now, where salaries are going down and companies can hire anything they want, it might be harder to get that freelance work than the regular job. But again, it's something you need to explore for wherever you live. And like Darren and Dr. Nick said, just make sure wherever you are, you're aware of any kind of taxation laws or paying for your own health care or putting aside your own pension or preparing for taxes, getting insurance, whatever it is. So I hope that helps. Moving on in the lightning round. Do you think there's an age when people stop thinking of you as an innovative UXer and might be less likely to hire you? I'm just turning 30 now, but I'm wondering about the future. Whether switching or applying for jobs might be harder as I get older because companies see you as less fresh or exciting talent. I know it's tough when all of us we're 30.
Oh
Darren was just 30 for the 30th time. No. Sorry, that was the wrong exponent. That didn't sound right.
That was great. Man, I'm going to start this one off since I'm the senior in the group. I'm the oldest one of us, so I'll dive in. I don't know if Dr. Nick knew that, but I'm the oldest one of the group.
Yes. Dr. Nick's only, I think, a year older than I am. A year and a half.
Okay. Yeah.
None of it's age tickets.
I'm the baby.
I'm almost. As I heard that question, I just began to think, don't put too much into what people think of you. Just continue to be excellent. Be subscribed to excellence. I like to say be addicted to excellence. Be addicted to it. And just she saw something.
It's us.
Just always be your best. Don't worry about what people think. Yeah, right.
That's not possible too.
Don't worry about what people think. Isn't it funny how peer pressure never goes away? But as we get older, we can choose how we manage it a bit better. I mean, there's peer pressure in the nursing home, for God's sake. Don't worry about it. Be excellent at what you do. be excellent at what you do, and you're always going to run into people that are going to discount you. I bring this up from time to time. Actually, I'm gonna tell a little bit of a story. Yeah,
oh God, I'm gonna keep you from telling the story.
Okay, I worked at a company once, and I let my grade come in, and they treat me one way. The next day, I get my hair colored, and I come in the very next day, and the same people that treat me like garbage treat me like I'm the best thing since sliced bread. When you see the ageism, and I frequently talk about this, when I pinch my skin, you know what I'm talking about, right? So, I have more melanin than everybody else on the show. I have a higher melanin content, and just in case you didn't realize that, people do treat me differently because of that. And so, if all you're worried about is your age, you got a lot of big surprises awaiting you. So my recommendation is focus on excellence, be that, and don't let all the other stuff go by the wayside because it's worthless.
I just want to quickly say I've seen Peach's identity is secret here, but I've seen Peach's LinkedIn, and Peach's you've got nothing to worry about. You are an absolute expert. You've got years of experience in UX research. You're being hired by the top companies. Whether or not you're enjoying it, there's another story. But you're being hired by the top companies. You're going to be fine. And all of us do run into ageism and certainly other discriminations. But there isn't really anything that you can do to prepare for that. There's unfortunately ageism out there. And I've let most of the gray grow in. Not all of it. Some of it I color.
We're all of the opinion that Debbie adds the gray for gravitas.
No!
She's actually, you see.
The front is natural, the back is dyed. Otherwise my whole head would be silver, and I feel too young for that. So the back is dyed and the front is natural.
But Peaches, with great age comes great wisdom. You see? And as a dinosaur at 30, you have seen things that other younger folk haven't seen. And you've learned from things, and you've made mistakes and learned from those. And believe it or not, there are things like genuine seniors, of which you sound like you're one. In the coming years to come, people like you are really important because you need to share that experience with the newer, younger generations. It's called mentorship and sharing the benefit of your experience on the job on actual projects. So I'd see your star getting brighter, not dimmer. You see what I mean?
For sure. I would love to work with Peaches someday. All right, moving on, lightning round. How do you perceive the future of CX? I'm fascinated by your collective time in the industry and would love to know some patterns you've all observed that have transpired over the decades. Where do you think this will go in the next 10 years? Ooh, and possibly the lightning version.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, so kind of where do you, thinking about all the time we've spent in CX or UX and what we've watched transpire over the years, where do we think this is going in the next 10 years?
Ooh.
This reminds me of all those January articles you get, top UX trends for 2022.
There won't be UX. Remember we did that one at the beginning of the year, and one of the trends was like UX. Someone always predicts that UX won't exist anymore.
Yeah, every year
Still
UX
here.
dies.
People always say that. Everybody I've seen says that either have no experience or less than 2 years. They don't know what they're talking about. It might take on a different shape, but as long as people are out there still fighting for true UX, somebody's going to embrace it as it is. As small as the volume of companies that have maturity level to respect UX are out there, yeah, that's crazy. That's the goofy stuff they say. Check all of those, Solomon, check all of the profiles on the people that write that stuff, and you find they're all hacks, all of them. We need to press forward. Might we be more representative in service design? I personally hope we are, because I think that there's a lot to offer, and I think there's a lot of great things going on in service design, and I see that as a natural progression. Some companies might do more CX, which is funny because what we now call UX used to be, the original vision was that it was CX and it was more holistic. But when the advent of the internet came, everything started focusing on digital, and it shifted to information architecture, interaction design, and then in the mid 2000s, then it shifted, and UX became a common acronym. But today, people are just trying to determine where we're going to go. That's why we have to keep fighting, because people who don't know anything are the ones trying to tell us where we're going, and I'm not going to sit by and take that.
So true. Nick, where are we going in the next 10 years?
So clearly, I think the two sides, the two major components of UX, research and design, will evolve way beyond what you know currently. So I don't know, I think Debbie or someone, no, it wasn't you, Debbie, sorry. Somebody shared a Google quantitative user researcher one-pager today. Did
Oh,
you guys
I
see
saw
that on LinkedIn?
that. Yeah, that was going around LinkedIn.
Yeah,
I
it
saw
was
that.
super interesting. Super interesting. If you get a look at that, on the very bottom line of that page, it showed a comparison of the three types. Effectively, I can see all of the academic types with empirical or quantitative methodologies, skills, somebody who can operate SPSS, or Mathematica, whatever your tool of choice is, starting to augment the web analyst side of things. Because right now they buy a tool, they license it, and a web analyst drives it. That's going to be complemented by a quantitative user researcher. And so the research side of the practice will become much bigger, in that you'll have qualitative user researchers and quantitative user researchers. I think that's one of, in some organizations, that will become a much more appropriate distinction to make. Some organizations who are way down the maturity curve just need to get any friggin' researcher. But those that are down the maturity curve will start to delineate those two streams. And the same sort of thing, I can't really speak to design too much. It's not really my wheelhouse. But there's UX, UI, and interaction design and UX design need to sort their lives out and call themselves one thing, because that's a joke. That's it.
Yeah, and my lightning version answer to that would be, please Google for my Medium article, 2-year prediction about CX and UX, because I've written an entire article about where I see it going, and I think it's just better answered in the Medium article. I think I read it on this show as one of the episodes, so you might also be able to find it. Kayleen asks, where can we see that? And I am trying to see if I saved that screen to my computer, and then I can send it to the Slack channel. No, it doesn't look like I saved it. Nick and Darren, if you can send me a link to that. Is that the sound of you sending me a link? No. Send me the link and I'll share it with the Slack channel. Sorry, Kayleen. Oz says, thanks, gotta go. Going to the grocery store and a dental appointment. Excellent, Oz. I will follow all of those on Instagram. Thanks for coming by. Be well and safe. Okay, the next question is a little bit strange for us, so I think we're going to be able to handle it in a lightning round. It is, what are the best qualities that are needed in a QA tester? Seriously.
Wrong meeting, sorry.
I'm surprised that we're hearing that, but I will say a few things.
Go for it, Lightning Man.
Attention to detail, patience, the ability to exercise mutual professional respect. I've worked with a lot of QA people as a UX person, and we, at one company in particular, after we handed off our wireframes and everything, and it went down the line and the developers were done, the QA people were the last line of defense, so to speak, to make sure that things were deployed properly. And those are the things that I appreciated about the QX people that I worked with. So.
All right. Yeah, as for best qualities, my previous boyfriend was a QA tester and he was born for it. He was just wonderful at it. And he was obviously great attention to detail, didn't mind doing things repetitively and looking for where it changed or broke. He mostly I would say the attention to detail But I don't know enough about QA to say what else. I mean, obviously that his was more manual testing, so it wasn't automated testing. So we don't know if you mean manual or automated, but we're also kind of not totally qualified to answer that since we talk about UX here. I'm going to move on because we have 15 minutes left and 3 questions, so I'm cutting everybody off. We have our last 3 questions. Could the Musketeers give a view on measurement frameworks like Net Promoter Score and Net Loyalty Score? Is there real value outside of being a 10,000-foot dowsing rod for potential customer pain?
I like the 10,000-foot downing rod, though.
Man, Net Promoter Score. That's being trashed these days, isn't it?
I'm constantly pooping on it, but there you go. So, okay, so what do y'all think of Net Promoter Score and Net Loyalty Score? I'll give a quick answer since I just answered this 2 hours ago in a live talk I did for a secret corporate event. And because I was asked a question like this, and I said, I generally hate Net Promoter Score. I think it's slow and reactive. It doesn't tell us anything about individual features or products. It's like, hey, in general, do you think you'd tell somebody that you like us? And it just reminds me of talking to the mafia. But the problem is it doesn't give us information about what's going right, what's going wrong, how long has it been going wrong, what can we do about it. And so to me, the only usage for NPS is to highlight what we don't know. Congratulations, you have a 6.4 out of 10. Now let's spin up the qualitative research and find out what's going wrong and where our product disconnects with people or where it's not a match to user needs. So I would say other than using it as a clue that we need to fill in the what's and why's and how's and task analyses and so on, I don't like it. Gentlemen?
I'll chime in real quick. I don't think we can really address it in the lightning round fully beyond what Debbie just did. I think we should have its own show where you go through each part of the Net Promoter Score and just rip it to shreds. That's what
I want to do that with system usability score.
That was my
Please
point.
do.
You just dropped it from me.
I want
Please
to
do.
Okay, how about the 3 of us? How about you guys up for this? We're just planning this now. Will you guys walk through NPS and SUS and rip it to pieces with me?
Let's do that.
SUS is
That's
too
what
easy.
we do.
It's too easy. SUS is the worst.
It's okay, great.
It's terrible.
It's a
I had
date.
a person wanted to lynch me because I told him that we shouldn't be giving people SUS scores to our executives because I said it's too easy to tear it down and that's going to hurt our credibility as a UX operation to be suggesting this. And I did a full report on it, and the person on the team threw the report aside and blew it off and just kept running around talking about SUS score. It's too easy to go on Google and blow up a SUS score.
All right, I'm going to send you guys a message and plan this.
Yeah, okay, fine. Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Okay.
That's what UX people do. We rip stuff up.
Back onto NPS very quickly. NPS for me is often a reflection of brand perception, nothing more, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
That's skewed to heck. I mean, it's skewed so many different ways.
It only lends value to marketing.
Yeah, exactly. It's to say, look, we're great. Look, all these people are validating us. It doesn't inform anything else. It doesn't inform product development or iteration. It just helps you to feel artificially good about yourself. And the only people that want to do that are marketing people. Meh.
Yep.
And over on LinkedIn, Dragos, who was just at my previous talk, so Dragos is having the 12-inch dance remix Debbie evening. Dragos said, NPS is like a horoscope. Everybody can look at it and imagine they understand something.
Wow, man, that's deep, man.
Yeah, he is. All right, so we got 2 more questions. We're gonna. Seth is looking forward to us tearing this down. So guys, check LinkedIn. I'm gonna find a calendar. Hello, Dragos. Okay, we've got 2 more questions. We're gonna make it. This question says, I have a dilemma. I want to move away from big tech, but I'm stuck because it feels impossible to move to non-big tech as an individual contributor UX researcher without accepting at least a $30,000 to $40,000 pay cut. Is there any hope?
I
I
I
can't
think
answer that
there
because
is.
I'm not stateside, but
Mm.
I can't
I
say
think
that.
there is. I've seen a lot of companies that value UXR. I think it's still the same old thing. You just keep hammering away, and you keep applying, and you keep talking to companies, and you keep looking at the opportunities to see what's gonna present itself. There's salaries have dropped a lot, but that's because maturity levels have dropped, and people are getting folks for nothing. Thank you, boot camps, and creating issues like this. But somebody out there will I've seen companies that value it, and they don't look to get pay the bottom of the barrel for people in UXR. So I say keep plugging away.
Nick, something to add?
Well, sorry, remind me of the topic. Sorry, I was miles away.
This person was thinking about leaving
Oh,
UX
this is
and
big
tech.
tech. Sorry, yeah. Sorry, with you. Yeah, it
Let's all
depends
join
really.
hands and bring Nick to the table.
Sorry, the thing is that well, it's a current topic for me because money, in theory, isn't everything, but it is at the same time. So if you can afford, like I'm a family guy with mouths to feed and all of that stuff, one child still in private school, some major financial commitments. It's not easy to make those changes. But if you're younger or you don't have those sorts of dependents, sometimes taking the pay cut for a couple of years to go somewhere to have a less toxic environment, get different exposure in a different industry, different methodologies, whatever that thing is, different audiences, that's not a bad thing. I mean, so it means you go on one holiday less a year, or I don't know what that means, but often that's not a bad trade-in. So think about it, I mean, but if you're an older person and you've got commitments, then I get it. It's a tough bind. I can't help really. I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, I don't have any great advice here. I mean, some tech jobs in some cities pay a lot of money, and it's hard to replicate those salaries when you're out. The only time I hear of people having that success is that if they get into some sort of consulting or coaching where they're able to somewhat name their price because of how much they've built themselves up and kind of have their own entrepreneurial adventure. Other than that, it does seem like a bit of a drop. Our last question is, I was handed to start a new project from scratch. I'm the only UX designer. No roadmap, no planning, no timeline from my PM/PO. How should I manage myself through this without sacrificing my UX process or also doing the PM/PO work? Nick, this sounds like some of the stories you've told.
Yeah, I mean, you really just got to be your own. This is you being a freelancer, basically, even though you're not. This is you being manager of you. In some respects, this is a really good thing because you've got a green field. You've got the opportunity to work the way that you want to without too many constraints or legacy BS to deal with. So there's probably a lot of good to do here. If you're feeling uncomfortable because you don't know what that looks like, then just start. Just start. Like what I'm saying is work put yourself in a week sprint. It doesn't have to be 2 weeks. Put yourself in a week sprint. Set yourself a sprint goal, and try to stick to that. Or put your research. If you're doing research and design, then keep one part of the sprint for research and the other part for the design. And then you know what I mean. And so if you've been exposed to good delivery or good agility, then just be agile in your own little one-person pod. Until such time as the cavalry comes or not. But in any case, you're going to create this lovely little walled garden for yourself to do some nice work in.
Beautiful. Darren, anything to add?
Yeah, I would only add on. I love what Dr. Nick said. The only thing I'd add is there are certain things there you have to have answers for. So make sure that you find out what the critical dates are, things like that. Somebody has that information. I would go ahead, if you have to put on the PO hat for just a little bit of time so you can get those answers, do it because it's critical to you. If somebody understand what you need that's critical to you that you didn't receive, go get that and then get to the work. It is a great position to be in, but you got to have those answers.
Yeah, and I would say if there's really no timeline and no plan, then maybe there's no limitations. And I would just draw up a plan and say, I'm going to do this, if you're doing research, I'm going to do this research. And, if you're the end-to-end unicorn, then I'm going to do this research and this analysis and these artifacts. And then I'm going to do this IA and interaction design and this prototyping and this testing and then a round of changes. Make your own timeline, plan it out, pad it a little, and just work from it, or submit it to somebody and say, can I get this much to do this? And so I would just assume that without anybody giving you a plan or a timeline, make your own and estimate your time and just kind of go for it. So Denise says, thanks a lot. And that was Denise's question. And that wraps things up. So then I'm going to give each of you some last words. And don't forget to remind everybody where they can stalk you, follow you, subscribe to you, send you some cheese. Let's start with Nick. Nick, where can everybody find you, follow you, send you cheese?
Don't worry about the cheese, but I can be found on LinkedIn mostly. That's where I tend to live. I've been really quiet on there recently. My mum and dad told me if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So I've been quiet recently. I probably will be. It's just there's so much shit on there at the moment. It's getting on my nerves. And if I bark at everybody, I'll look like a dick. So I don't. But I'm still there. Don't worry. I've also got crazy work commitments. I've got a big assessment coming up next week. I've got my work life is going off crazy. So I'm not really spending much time doing that stuff. I'm actually doing lots of work, surprisingly. But that's where you can find me. UX Psychology on YouTube is a good place to go. Have a look at that. That's my channel. There's a video on there called An Introduction to UX Psychology. And if you want to know where the field is going, one direction it can go in is a UX Psychology direction. That's where I'm at. That's it. Thanks very much for having me, and we'll see you next month. Over to you, Mr. Hood. Dr. Hood, sorry, apologies.
You got your doctorate? No, not yet.
No,
I thought you did.
Not yet. I'm 3 classes away from my dissertation.
All right, next year.
3 classes away. Doctoral student, but that's it. Okay. I'll start off by talking about this. This little doohickey is out now. So you see that in the little green square. I think that guy looks familiar to you. So this book just came out, 97 Things Every UX Practitioner Should Know. I wrote the chapter on journey maps and experience maps, the difference between the two. I wrote that. My podcast is out there. Matter of fact, a new episode should have just come out where just addressing some critical issues there on the podcast. UX Uncensored YouTube channel is out there. Engage is still coming along, our private social media network. If you want to get into some engagement about UX where you don't have all the brouhaha that's going on LinkedIn, you don't have to be a slave to the algorithms. You can join us over on Engage. Hit me up for a link. I can invite you out there. Man, I just all over the place. For those that didn't know, I just got elected to become the director of education for the UXPA. So I'm on the board, on the process of ramping up for that. Now that's a 3-year term, and I plan on it being 3 years and out, but I want to have a lot of great impact.
No, I'm kidding.
In the 3 years. So we're going to get busy on that. We're ramping up now, just onboarding with that as we speak. Got some announcements coming. I don't even remember. As always, I forget something. So that's it. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. You can find me there. And the UX Chit Chat Hour, 2 weeks away. 2 weeks away for the next UX Chit Chat Hour. So last one was our biggest one. I never even made it to table 2. I believe Debbie was at table 2. I never even made it there. The conversation was so hot and heavy last time that I ended up stuck at a couple of tables. But we had more people. We had like 120 people acknowledged, and I think somewhere in the vicinity of 45 or 50 were there. So it's growing, and people are getting a lot out of it. So enjoying it. So I'm easy to find.
So true. All right. Well, great. Then thanks for joining. I've sent you both a message in LinkedIn about planning our Tearing Down Scores episode. And thanks to everybody who joined. Thanks to Oz for donating to the Cheese Fund. And quick show notes. Let me see when. I don't think we have a stream tomorrow. Tomorrow's our Slack channel networking. So check for that. And then let's see, Friday is reaction stream. Monday is Stephanie Walter talking about enterprise UX. Tuesday is double office hours. And I didn't book too many streams in the coming week because I have a special guest coming to visit me in person, which is scary because neither of us are vaccinated, but we're going to cross our fingers. And it is super friend of the show, Rolica. So
Oh, wow.
I'm very excited to meet her in person now that we've been working together about a year. So we'll try to, if we're not social distancing too much, we'll try to get her in the frame. So thanks, everybody. Be safe and healthy. If you're in South Africa, please stay inside for COVID reasons and other reasons. And everybody just keep making safe choices. Thanks again to Darren and Dr. Nick for their excellent answers and contributions today. Follow them, throw cheese at them, and I will see everybody Friday for the reaction stream. Thanks and be well. Bye. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are